Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Sustain Tool training webinar from POPAI UK and Ireland. My name's Martin Kingdon, and I'm the Insights and Sustainability Director. And answering the first question, hopefully you can now hear me. Many of you are already users, but we've also have a number of people who've not used the tool before. So the purpose of today is to familiarise you with the Sustain tool, which had a significant upgrade towards the end of last year. As some background, the Sustain tool is now being used by companies in 15 countries, so the importance of measuring carbon, amongst other metrics available from the tool, is being recognised in the industry around the world. Licenses are issued on a single country basis, so if you're trading across borders, you'll need multiple licenses, and discounts are available for those. Details on the website or from the office. Carrying on the international theme, we'll be exhibiting the Sustain tool in the POPAI Village in Hall 4 at Euroshop at the end of February, so do feel free to come along and say hello to us. More information on this and all our other sustainability activity is available on the POPAI website. The demo today is pre-recorded and will last 18 minutes from start to finish. It's been put together by Anthony Earle, our Sustainability Manager, and the session recording will be available afterwards, so if you want it, just drop us a note, please, at sustainability.co.uk. If you've any questions, please use the Q&A portal as it says there, and Anthony and I will look to answer them in the session after the demo finishes. If we don't answer your question in the session, we'll come back to you separately. And if you've got a question you think is commercially sensitive, please email us and then we will reply privately to you. All that being said, on with the webinar. Just a minor technical issue while we sort the sound out, everyone. Won't be a second.
Around full life cycle assessment principles. It is not a full LCA tool. Instead, it is an indicator.
Sorry about that, and we're off.
Welcome to this demonstration of the latest version of POPAI's Eco-Design tool, Sustain. During the demo, we will look at the type of information needed to populate the tool, how to enter the data, and how to interpret the results. Before we start, it should be remembered that whilst the Sustain tool has been designed around full life cycle assessment principles, it is not a full LCA tool. Instead, it is an indicator tool which can accommodate certain data approximations, such as the distances from the point of manufacture to delivery and the geographic origin of materials, should this information not be known in full. We'll start by looking at the home page. Here you can amend your personal details and change your password. You can also create a folder structure in which to store your projects. You can create as many folders as you like and call them what you want. Could be by client, display type, time period, whatever is the most appropriate for your business. The Sustain tool is constantly being updated. So if you notice something different, click on latest updates, where you'll be told what has changed and what, if anything, you may need to do differently. You can access your projects by clicking here or here. When you access your projects, you will see the full list of the projects you have created, or you can look at them via folder structures if you've created some. To create a project, click here. You have two options. You may create a project from new, in which case this will be the first page you need to populate. We'll look at this in more detail shortly. Or if you have an existing project which is similar to the one that you want to create, simply choose the existing project, make a copy of it. Here you can see we have a copy project, and then change any details that need to be amended to reflect your new project. This will save you having to enter all the data from scratch. We'll now look at a project that has been already populated. In this instance, this is for a permanent display, although it should be remembered that the tool can also be used for temporary and semi-permanent displays. The first thing I need to enter is the name of your project in this free text field. If you are using a folder structure, you can then allocate it to a folder. You'll then need to select the POP type from this drop-down menu here. You may or may not be required to add a client code. If this is the case, you'll be revised separately. You can then use this free text field to record details of your project. Please remember to click Save every time you enter details, otherwise the data you enter will be lost when you navigate away from the page. You will then need to create a version. Each project can accommodate up to 6 different versions. This is so you can record iterations of a similar display under the same project, or if you want to do some what-if analysis. For example, you create your first version to reflect the display as it is currently manufactured, and then you could create a second version to look at the effect of using different materials or sourcing materials from different locations, etc. Adding a version is the same principle as creating a project. You can either create one from new, or you can copy an existing version. If you have more than one version, you can navigate between them here. When entering a version, you will need to give it a title in this free text field. The Sustain tool will then generate a unique reference number. If you have any queries about your project or version, contact sustainability@popai.co.uk, quoting the unique reference number, and we'll be able to clarify your query. You can then record some details of your version here, and then you'll need to enter the number of displays of this particular version that are being produced. You will then need to indicate whether your display is permanent, temporary, or semi-permanent, depending on its life expectancy, and whether or not it is a finished project, i.e. it is going to be manufactured and placed in stores, in which case you'll also need to record its first distribution date, or whether or not it's just a test or a prototype. If it is just a test or a prototype, it is important that you select no, so that this version will not be included in any benchmarking analysis. You then have the option to record some details about your client, the brand, perhaps the division, and also upload an image or diagram of your display. You will see there is a navigation bar at the bottom and the top of each page. This is a logical order in which you would normally populate information in the tool. However, there's nothing to stop you going from one section to another as the information you require becomes available. We'll now look at how to enter a display into the tool. This is done on a component by component principle, with each component being manufactured from a single material. In this instance, we have a frame. This is a free text field, so you can call the component what you like. You'll then need to indicate the condition of the component, whether it is new, lightly refurbished, heavily refurbished, or reused. You'll then need to select the material from which the component is made from this list here. Enter the finished weight of the component and its recycled content. In this case, we're saying that 50% of this 2,500 grams of steel comes from a recycled source. You'll then need to record the number of components per display, not the number of components for the entire production run. Depending on the processes selected, you may need to add some additional information, such as the weight of material used or area painted. Finally, you'll need to enter the distance travelled by the component or material from the supplier to your point of manufacture, as well as the transport type. And you can record this in either miles or kilometres. If you want to add any additional information about the component or the supplier, you can do so in this field here. This page will then summarise all the components in your display. Here, for example, we can see we have 4 aluminium shells, which have been heavily refurbished. Each weighs 500 grams, 75% of which is recycled. They've been subject to machining and powder coating, and it's taken 125 miles by road to deliver them. In the case of the feet, because they're made of 2 different materials, they will have to have 2 separate entries. Once you've added your components, the tool will then calculate the total display weight. You'll then need to enter the volume for shipping. This is the volume of the display without any packaging, either flat packed or fully assembled as appropriate. Finally, you need to add the life expectancy of the display. Having entered the display details, we can move to packaging. If you were to have no packaging, simply select no, it does not have any packaging, and move on to the next section. If you do have packaging, you'll have to add the components for the primary packaging. This would be typically a box in which the display is placed. And if you have any, the secondary packaging. This could be a larger box in which a number of the smaller boxes are placed, or a pallet. Adding packaging is exactly the same principle as adding components for a display. In this instance, we have a box which is new. It is manufactured from cardboard, for which there's 500 grams, 85% of which are recycled, and there is 1 box per display. Again, we have the option of adding different processes, and in this instance, we need to specify area cut and printed. And again, the distance travelled by the material or component to your point of manufacture will need to be recorded here. You will then need to specify the number of displays that fit in your primary packaging. So, for example, if 10 displays fitted in 1 box, you would put 10 in this field. You'll then need to enter the volume of the primary packaging. In this instance, this would be the external dimensions of the box and how many times the packaging is used. If you have any secondary packaging, you add the components here. However, please do not include pallets. Pallets are constantly being reused and recycled. There is therefore no need to enter them in the tool. However, if you have any other materials associated with palletization, for example, shrink wrap, please enter that. The exception to not adding pallets is if your pallet is bespoke and an unusual shape to accommodate an unusually shaped display. It is therefore likely to be used only once. In that case, you would enter it. We'll then need to add the number of primary packaging components that fit into or onto the secondary packaging and what that total volume is, again, excluding any volume associated with the pallet, and also how many times the secondary packaging is used. The tool will then calculate the weight of the packaging, and will also look at the ratio of the display volume against the primary packaging volume, i.e. this figure here, item of primary packaging, the figure should be just over 1. If this figure were, say, 5 or 10, i.e. your packaging volume is 5 or 10 times that of your display volume, this is an immediate indication that there may be too much packaging and there might be an opportunity to save some materials. This figure could, of course, be less than 1 if the number of displays in your primary packaging are greater than 1. Looking now at distribution, the first thing you will need to do is indicate how many different countries your displays are exported to. If your displays are used solely in the country in which they are manufactured, please select 1. You will then need to enter the distance travelled by the finished displays to your client, including the transport type, and again selecting whether this be miles or kilometres. If your displays go to multiple different destinations, e.g. different retail outlets, you can record the average distance for this journey. You'll then need to record the number of displays that fit in each vehicle or container being used. This is a theoretical maximum and not the actual number used. This is to record the logistical efficiency. If you wish to record any additional information about the customer, you can do so here. If your display has an electrical component, e.g. lighting or a digital screen, you will need to enter this section. If it doesn't, this section may be ignored. The first thing you'll need to do is select the country or region in which your displays are being used. If your displays are being used in more than one country, then you can simply select a region. You will need to enter the energy use of the electrical component, which you should be able to find from your supplier, and estimate the number of hours per week in which it is used. Is it on 24/7? Is it turned on and off with store opening times, etc.? The tool will then calculate the electricity use over the lifetime of the display. The last data you'll need to enter is end of life options. For each of the components in the display and each of the components in the packaging, you will need to select whether they are recycled, go to landfill, reused, or incinerated at the end of life. You will also need to indicate whether or not your display is easy to disassemble or not. If it is not easy to disassemble, you will have to click no, and the tool will assume that only a percentage of your displays will actually be recycled. Turning to the results. You will be able to compare the different versions in your project or look at them individually. You will also be able to look at the results for the display only, the packaging only, or combined. In terms of the display, there are 6 different metrics that are measured. The design, supply chain logistics, materials and processes used, the recycled content, delivery logistics, and the end-of-life options. Each metric has an indice from 0 to 20. The lower the score, the better the sustainability credentials of your display. So in this sense, we can see that version 1 with a smaller footprint is more sustainable than version 2. The numbers in the spider diagram are then repeated in this table here, and then aggregated into the sustained version score. And here we can see that version 1 with the score of just over 24 is much better than version 2 with a score of over 53. The sustained version score can be used to easily compare one version to another or one project to another, but it cannot be used for any external references. Next, the tool will measure the material circularity. Here, the higher the number, the better the result. And this will be based on the condition options that were entered at the component stage, i.e. whether the components are reused, refurbished, or new. The tool will also calculate the carbon dioxide equivalent of your display. That's to say, not just the carbon, but also other pollutant gases such as methane. In this sense, we can see that version 1, with just over 53 kilograms of CO2e, is better than version 2, which has over 139. The tool will then calculate the total carbon for the entire production run. This life cycle carbon display figure is the sum of these figures here. The embedded carbon in the display, dictated by the materials used, the carbon from logistics, and any carbon associated with any electrical components used over the life of the display. It will also take into account the carbon generated as a result of disposing of the display. The tool will then aggregate by weight the different end-of-life options: recycled, landfill, incinerate, and reuse. In this case, over 89% by weight of version 1 is recycled, whereas in version 2, 100% of the components go to landfill. Next, the water footprint is calculated. And again, we can see that version 1 is a considerably better result than version 2. And again, the water footprint for the entire production run is also calculated. Finally, the tool will aggregate by weight the amount of recycled material used in each display. In this sense, we can see that just over 55% of version 1 is made from recycled materials, whereas in version 2, it's only just over 23%. Sustain will then generate some recommendations for all of the versions you've entered. These will look at recyclability, recycled content, and carbon footprint. For recyclability, for example, it has identified that 5 different materials are used. The more materials used, the more difficult it will be to disassemble the display, and therefore the less likelihood that it will be recycled. So would it be possible to use fewer materials? Looking at recycled content, you can see there is a traffic light system. The shelf and header are made from materials with a high recycled content, therefore they're green. The feet and lighting less so, therefore red. Finally, you'll be able to print this page as a PDF, including any images that you've uploaded. And also you can export all the data, including the results, to Excel, and this will allow you to compare one project to another. This concludes the demonstration. Thank you for listening.
Okay, I hope everyone found that to be useful and informative. I believe it might have been, because we've only got one question that's come through the Q&A portal, so I'll address that and just give you a chance to have a little further thought if you have any other questions you want to put to us. The question says, it's great that the tool has a high level of detail to get the most accurate impact, but for eco-design, you may not have this level of detail from the offset. So does the tool have averages that can be applied to get a ballpark number for comparisons? The short answer to that is no, not right now, but we've just started a project to look at benchmarking environmental data within the tool for certain display types, and we're going to start slowly and expand it outwards. We've had about 13,000 projects go through Sustain tool now, so we've got quite a body of data. So we will be starting to look at that. If you've got particular concerns about units of your own, then get in touch and talk to us, and we will come back to you individually on that. I've had a separate request asking people how to get the demo video. If you email us at sustainability@popai.co.uk, we will send it to you, and the lady who's requested it, we've got your name anyway, so we'll send it to you. I'm just going to give you 5 seconds for anyone else to put a question through, and I'll mention one further thing. Initially, we started the Sustain tool to focus totally on display items, but subsequent to that, we found that users have been putting through other things, including sales promotion items, some exhibition pieces, and so on. So it's slightly broader than we initially planned. We're using about 120 materials, and we're always interested to get feedback from people if you're using materials which are different in some way to what we have in the tool, and we'll do our best to source the data, which can be quite challenging sometimes. So finally, thanks for attending. If you want more information, please email us sustainability@popai.co.uk or visit the POPAI website, and we will be delighted to help you. Thanks everybody, and I look forward to speaking to everybody soon.